So, hello everybody. I'm Andy Becker. I'm the head of academics, and welcome to IOMUN. IOMUN 11 to the opening ceremony.
Woo!
I'm really happy for you to be here and hope you enjoy this lovely conference. Uh, we're going to start. Oh, can we start? Yes. Okay, so on the agenda we have today Daniel Gendis, the director, is going to speak. We're going to introduce you to our new secretary team, introduce you to our new committees, and we will have a keynote speech from Mr. Eston that came here. Mikhail is not going to be here. Okay. And would like to invite to speak Mr. Daniel Gendis, the director of IOMUN for many years and one of the founders of it.
Thank you very much, Yaniv. It is a pleasure to be here in this morning, afternoon, evening, depending where in the world you are, to welcome you to IOMUN 11. It's really great to see some familiar faces in the secretariat and the chairs and in the leadership team. I will not take too much of your time because we have a very interesting keynote speaker and Model UN to do. But I will note that the teamwork that I've seen in the Secretariat for IOMUN is as inspiring as it has always been. To watch participants from, I think, 6 different countries and 5 different time zones coming to work together just for like upper conference management with chairs, I think it's others, and delegates even more, is an initiative that would not have been possible without the innovations of the whole social distancing time period. The technological literacy that the students here are able to use, moving with Zoom as a video platform and using WhatsApp as the chat network, making slideshows in Canva that can be edited by multiple people across the world and done as second nature, is a testament to how far young people in the world have been able to move. And given that there are still offices and systems that will use, antiquated methodologies to, process things, shows that it's not just that the younger generation has what to learn, but also what to teach about how to creatively combine platforms and technologies. Abraham Lincoln says, whatever you are, be a good one. And in that regard, if you're going to be a good online Model UN participant or staff member, you need to be technologically literate. You need to learn to position your camera for the audience. You need to have a separate mic off screen. You need to speak more slowly. You need to be willing to repeat yourself to make up for internet lag. And in that regard, I think IOMUN is really at the forefront of what makes online Model UN and Model UN plus technology work. And what I find the most impressive of all is that online MUN, not just with IOMUN, but also with others, is continuing to work because of the thing that it offers. Model UN is not always the most accessible activity. And if you involve flights, not the cheapest activity. But IOMUN lets people who would never meet in real life talk together, simulate together, and have friendships together in a way that couldn't happen otherwise. And for that, I feel the place of online Model UN, which is student run and student driven, has such an important place, not just in the Model UN world, but in the student growing up experience. For me, on the grown up end of all this, when we started IOMUN, the purpose was to give an alternative to MUN that just wasn't happening. But watching now a 4th generation of club leadership continue to develop and aim to do 4 conferences a year, and make it part of the MUN structure. The teachers can get the schedule early enough, which will hopefully happen after the summer, where there are teachers who want to sign their students up to participate, that this will work and it's become part of the actual MUN calendar. Sort of did it during Zoom during the COVID times, and I hope it will continue to do so. Great job, Yaniv. Great job, Parker. Great job to everyone here. It's good to see you again or meet you for the first time. Have a great conference, and I'm really looking forward to what comes next.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And now I'm going to introduce you to our new secretary members. That includes me, head of academics team, applications team, the head of it is Cherry, the logistics team, who the head of it is Omkar, and the marketing team, who the head of it is Redima. And my team, the academics team, we have Karishma, and on the applications team, we have Pragati. I'm really sorry if I'm pronouncing any of the names wrong. On the logistics team, we have Prakal, and on the marketing team, we have Jennifer. Next. And our committees for this conference, which we worked on very hard and we're hoping that you will enjoy. We have UNDOC beginners extreming the relations between legalizing of marijuana and drug-related crimes with the head chair of URJA. And for intermediate, we have UNICEF child labor explosion. The head chair is Bahalishu. I'm really sorry if I'm pronouncing any of the names wrong. I'm really sorry. I'm not good at that. And now I want to invite our keynote speaker, Mr. Aston, who's the president of Young World Federizing and a member of the board of Citizens for Global Solutions.
Perfect. Headphones because my mic is much better just from my computer. I do have a microphone that's off camera, but it's in my guest room and we have a guest staying with us right now. So unfortunately, I'm just in my living room, but it's very important what you were saying about having a good setup. So this is my plan B setup. Okay. Can everyone, is it okay? Can everyone hear me all right though? Just like this?
You sound great.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So yeah, my name is Eston McCaig and I'm the president of the Young World Federalists. We're a global youth movement building support for world federalism and global democracy. I'm also a youth climate ambassador at the Center for UN Constitutional Research, a member of the board of Citizens for Global Solutions, which is the US-based World Federalist organization. And I'm on the membership and outreach committee for the World Federalist Movement Institute for Global Policy, which is sort of the umbrella organization for our movement. Yeah, so it's an honor to have the opportunity to speak with you all today. And I'd like to extend a special thanks to Mr. Omkar Patanayak and the other organizers who have graciously invited me to speak at this event. I myself personally participated in several model UNs during my time at university. And I was fortunate enough to travel all the way from my home in Seattle to New York City to participate in a model UN session inside the UN General Assembly chambers. So yeah, my love and appreciation for global governance was fostered during those conferences. But more importantly, my firm belief that we must build a better and more inclusive way of governing the globe was also fostered during those conferences. So in the next few minutes, I'll briefly explain my work with the Young World Federalists, what we have planned for the future, and why I'm a part of this movement in general. And after that, I'll open up the floor for questions, as it's always much more fun to have an interactive session. So hopefully you have some questions, but yeah, and it's a small group, so we can have a little bit more intimate conversation. Cool. So a little bit about the Young World Federalists, or YWF as we call it. We're a global movement fighting to give humanity a voice. So we envision a sustainable, just, and peaceful world through a democratic world federation. a world run by humanity for humanity, providing equal opportunity to all on a thriving planet. We were founded in 2019 by two young people, one from the US and the other from Australia, who were both interested in world federalism but had trouble engaging with the movement online. And as was already explained, that's very important these days to have a strong online presence. So since then, we've become one of the fastest growing members of our movement, with several large online communities and local chapters all around the world and hundreds of volunteers. It's been really fun to be a part of it the last few years and see all the growth and engagement. Yeah. So our biggest event is the annual Week for World Parliament, which we are fundraising to bring young people, young global citizens together in 3 major cities around the world. So this will take place in October of this year. So October 21st to 23rd is the main weekend we're focusing, but there'll be events around the world for the whole week, sort of centered on UN Day, which I believe is Sunday the 20th, if I remember correctly. Okay, so the plan for this year is to bring young people together in Delhi, Nairobi, and New York to learn about global democracy, gain skills for the future, and show their support for the cause. And we're trying to link these events together by drafting a sort of global youth declaration, starting in Delhi and then sending the document to Nairobi and then to New York, where it will ideally be delivered to the UN Youth Envoy or someone similar at the UN headquarters in New York. And at the end of my talk, I'll provide some links in the chat at the end so you can learn about this project and how to get involved. But it's what we're planning right now, and it's a lot of fun to plan it and to fundraise, really. Yeah. So just taking a step back, sort of what's the context? What is world federalism? What's the context to this movement? So the political movement to unite the world is almost 100 years old. Most identify the Campaign for World Government, which was founded in 1937 by feminists and suffragettes Lola Maverick Lloyd and Rosika Schwimmer as the genesis of the movement. However, since 1937, the world has transformed in ways unimaginable. So today, humanity is grappling with a growing pile of existential global challenges. 20th century holdovers like poverty, inequality, human rights abuses, corruption, and the threat of nuclear war are now being complemented with an array of new challenges like the climate crisis, misinformation, and of course, the pandemic. So I believe that our species is at a crossroads. We must choose between the two paths before us. The first path is to attempt to solve these global challenges within the current framework, to use the Westphalian nation state to chip away at the symptoms of a systemic problem. The second path is to transform the system, to create an inclusive and accountable system of global governance in which humanity can come together and solve global challenges as one united political unit. Uniting the world has, of course, already happened in many respects. This is why we have so many global problems. We have one global economy, one global security, one heating climate, one global public health, and mostly one internet. Yet despite all of this globalization, we are still politically divided by boundaries drawn by old men who, in many cases, died hundreds of years ago. So it's time to overcome this political division and unify the species, just as the economy, security, climate, public health, and internet have all been unified. So with a democratic world federation, humanity would have the tools to address global problems. Now, I'm not saying that the solutions would fall from the sky or that a democracy on this scale is in any way an easy task. Exactly the opposite, actually. World federation is, of course, the more difficult pathway than simply letting the nation states do their best to solve problems that are out of their control. Of course, as world federalists, we know all too well how difficult this endeavor is. And we choose to fight for it not in spite of its difficulty, but because of it. Because we know that we are living in an era where the hardest option is the only one that's going to work. Humanity has been taking the easy path for far too long, and we are the unfortunate generation that has to get off the couch and into the trenches. This is why young people around the world are joining the Young World Federalists, and why you all here feel the call to engage with global governance and the UN system. because we know it's up to us. It's up to us to build a movement to transform the globe. It's up to us to speak to our friends, family, and neighbors about the need for human unity. It's up to us to write articles and make memes, plan events, and lobby our local leaders to speak out in favor of a global democracy. As World Federalists, we know that it's up to us to lead humanity away from destruction and toward a peaceful, sustainable, and equitable future for all creatures on Earth. So I'm so incredibly proud of our young volunteers, many of them high school students, who believe in themselves enough to join this movement. I'm inspired by our local organizers around the world who localize this grand vision and build communities of World Federalists. And I'm also inspired by our partners and supporters who donate, collaborate, and promote this idea to others. You all, young Model UN participants interested in global governance, are key players in this movement. Your work studying, analyzing, and debating within and about the UN system is essential. Just as Lola Maverick Lloyd and Rosika Schwimmer were fighting to save humanity from mass destruction in 1937, you engage with global governance because you know that a better world is not only possible, but necessary. As World Federalists, we are driven by an intense mixture of fear, hope, and love for humanity that can only be described as grit, an unstopped and prolonged persistence toward a goal. We have grit because we know that this is a big idea, because we know that in spite of its necessity today, we may not live to see a world federation. We have grit because World Federalists, since the beginning of the movement at the dawn of the Second World War, have always fought against the grain. We have always pushed upstream and fought to change things that most people understand to be permanent. Your engagement with global governance proves that you have grit, proves that you believe in something larger than yourself, and that you're prepared to fight for it. It proves that you believe that people have more in common than different, and that you know overcoming ancient boundaries is necessary to secure our common future. I'm honored to have the chance to speak with you all today and very much looking forward to your questions and comments. I'm totally open for anything, any questions at all. The Young World Federalists have several online communities, which I invite you all to join. And yeah, just thank you once again to the event organizers for inviting me to speak with you today. If you'd like to learn anything more about the Young World Federalists, you can check out our website. It's pretty easy. It's just ywf.world. And of course, like I said, I'll put some links in the chat. So thank you very much for your time. And now I open the floor to anyone who may have any questions or comments.
Yeah, I have a question also. You see kids, teenagers here in Model UN pretending that they're in the UN and trying to lead to solutions. Where do you see as the next, like, what is the next thing for them? What should they do in the future? Do you have any suggestions? Because I know some of the delegates here are about to graduate and they can't do most of the MUN and they want to continue this.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's obviously a lot of different pathways to take. It depends on what you're looking for. If you want to stay engaged with the UN system and international politics in general, then obviously going to university and studying these things is key. But then there's tons of NGOs like the Young World Federalists and others that are working to reform and change the system. So, I mean, I don't want to start just listing organizations. That's kind of boring and no one's really into that. But some of my favorites would be like Democracy Without Borders, the Center for UN Constitutional Research, and then there's large coalitions as well. So this is like big groups of civil society that sort of push for change. So one of the biggest and most successful ones is called the We the People's campaign. So that has, I don't know, 200 civil society organizations around the world, and they push for a World Citizens Initiative, a UN Parliamentary Assembly, a civil society envoy, and things like that. And then there's also the Campaign for the International Criminal Court, or the Coalition for the ICC. And that's also a massive group of NGOs that basically helped found and push to start the International Criminal Court, which is in The Hague. And for a long time, the World Federalist Movement was the leader of that coalition. So those are just a few of the things that you can get involved in. And all of these organizations and coalitions are always looking for young people to get involved. The old people really don't understand the technology and stuff like that. So they just they'll love when you get engaged. I can say that for sure. They're always looking for young volunteers.
So I believe one of our chairs has a question. Marsha, your
Yeah,
hand is.
thank you very much.
Everybody, please turn your cameras on.
Thank you. So, firstly, I'd like to begin with, I loved your address. I've been working with Global Federal League for a while in India, so I've seen you before. But so my question is that one thing that we frequently got, especially from our delegates or participants in the Week for World Parliament, if the world is a political unit, if it's one single political unit, how's the structure going to look like? And also, since most of us come from diverse countries like India, most countries in South Asia are very diverse and also large with these colossal amounts of population. So if the world comes together and there's so much diversity and so many different moral or political beliefs, then how are we going to make sure that there's welfare ensured for everyone?
Yeah. That's a great question, and not at all a simple one to answer, but I'll do my best to address it. I can say that we use this word federalism quite a bit, and I think it's important to remember that it's not necessarily like an ideological position. It's more of a pragmatic way or pragmatic governance structure of dealing with the diversity on Earth. So that's why we use that term federalism. And India is a federal state with many different states within it, just like Germany or the US and so on. There's a lot. So federalism really is a way of grappling so you can have that unity and diversity at the same time. Now, what exactly a democratic world federation would look like, what institutions would be there, what the role of a world parliament would be compared to the role of like a general assembly of the states themselves. These are all fantastic questions. And we as an organization don't really answer these questions. What we really try to do is foster a debate amongst young people about these questions, because we believe that designing a future united world needs to be a democratic and inclusive process. So many world federalists have sat down and kind of drawn out their perfect utopia. And those are really good exercises to do. And I encourage everyone to think, if I was the king of the world, how would I want things to look like? It's a fun mental exercise. King or queen, if you were the monarch, the emperor. So it's a fun exercise, but when it comes to actually building a world federation, it needs to be, delegates or representatives from constituencies around the world. So we're talking about members of parliament, parliamentarians, representatives, congressmen, coming together and actually designing basically like a constitutional sort of conference. And this could be under the auspices of like UN charter reform. So in the UN charter, it says that this document will be reformed every 5 years. And that, of course, has never happened. They've never reformed the UN charter, but there is a mechanism for it. So if there was sort of a charter reform conference where, representatives from all corners of the globe could come together, that is the place where I believe that this conversation needs to take place. So I'm sorry that I don't really, tell you exactly how I want the world to look like. I have my own. I'm in favor of like a one person, one vote, really, really democratic type model, but others are in favor of, the national government still having a really strong say. So there's many different variations of federalism. And so it's sort of a matter of looking at different federal countries and seeing what works and what doesn't work and things like that. But yeah, it's a really fun conversation to have.
Thank you.
I have some questions from also members from Secretary and also from other people. Okay. How would a world government deal with religion, more specifically religions that discriminate against other groups such as LGBTQ community? If we don't have an answer, these groups and countries won't join.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the main questions we get really is, so the first question that I just talked about was more like, what will a World Federation look like? And now we've gone into this other question that's the main one that we like to debate, which is how do we get there? How would this start small and expand? And what do we do with people that don't want to engage with it? And we actually just in our online community, we had a really intense debate about those, I don't want to mispronounce the name, but there's this island chain kind of off the east coast of India, IOMUN Islands, and there's this indigenous people there, and there was a really big debate over what's their role in the World Federation. So we as World Federalists don't really have all the answers here, but we do like to debate these questions. So just really quickly, I could say that there's like a few key pathways to achieve a World Federation. So I think the one that's closest to addressing the question here would be sort of the union of democracies, or democracies coming together to form a supranational, to integrate on a supranational level, similar to the European Union. It's not necessarily my most favorite way of a World Federation coming together. I'm much more of a bottom-up, grassroots global democracy. That's my preferred pathway. But when it comes to addressing people that really don't respect human rights, don't want to join and things like that, well, then it needs to be a coalition of the willing. And the relationship between that coalition of the willing and the people who don't want to join is, of course, also a matter of debate. I'm a really strong pacifist. So ideally, a World Federation brings peace. I think that's one of the core goals of it. So when it comes to minorities that don't respect the rights of other groups, especially like religious groups, that's a fantastic question. I think it's a question that the world is currently still trying to grapple with. But we sort of already have a system where we allow nation states to do their own thing, under the auspices of national sovereignty. If a country wants to discriminate against the LGBTQ community, they totally can. I'm not saying that's good, but that's the world we live in. It's not good. So I would say that there's like carrots and sticks that you can use to sort of encourage nation states to not discriminate against minority populations. And the big thing that you can look at is how the European Union expanded. And we have a lot of Spanish members, and they like to point to the fact that Spain was a dictatorship for a long time. And as the European Union was expanding, the EU used many carrots and sticks to basically pressure Spain to democratize and to abolish its dictatorship. Now, of course, the European Union they were not responsible for the fall of the Franco dictatorship in Spain, but they provided an alternative pathway. And so when the dictatorship in Spain fell, it was quite obvious. It was like the only pathway available was to democratize and join the European Union. So that's sort of a model that we can take. It's obviously not the most perfect solution, but it is a pathway that you can sort of allow either dictatorships or people that don't respect human rights to exist alongside a sort of democratic World Federation. However, obviously you have to swallow your pride and acknowledge that that's not the most perfect world. But yeah, it's a tough question to answer.
Another one. You mentioned the EU. I remember that the UK recently left the EU, and Poland and Hungary seem really unhappy with the EU at the moment. Global government seems to be something we're moving away from. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably in terms of, so that's sort of like two different things when you talk about the EU and the relationship between, national governments or member states in the European context, member states that don't respect the rulings or the wishes of the supranational, the European level. That's sort of the dance between the, the subnational and the national, or the federal, the union, and the member state, which is sort of what I was talking about before with, federalism as a dynamic process between different levels of governance. So, I mean, you can look at the United States, which started out mostly as a confederation, where the member states, the states of the U.S., had a lot of power and authority, and then slowly over time, the federal government in the U.S. has become the dominant governing force in a lot of respects, but still not all. So basically, every federal system has a different level of federalism. And I wouldn't say that it ever needs to be that there's like some set solution. There's no permanent solution that's going to work forever. So I really like what Germany has done. Germany's also a federal country. And since the founding of the Bundesrepublik Deutschland, or the Federal Republic of Germany, in 1949, they've had like 3 or 4 what they call like federal conferences, where they actually bring representatives from the Bundesländer, the states, and the Bund, the federal government, as well as civil society, and from the courts. They bring many people together to basically discuss this, like what is the division of powers between the lower level and the higher level of government. So it's an iterative process. It's never something that's set in stone. I think that's very important. It's a dynamic and fluid thing that we need to decide together. So I would never say that, once we decide on a system for governing the globe, that it's going to maintain and stay the same for hundreds of years. In fact, the opposite. We should always be reflecting and seeing what works and trying new things and experimenting. So it's generally shifting our perspective on what it means to govern. And then the other question, I'm sorry if I forget, what was it? Are we moving away from the political unity? That's also a hard question to answer. It's impossible to say. I mean, if you read the news and it's sad, then you might say yes. But if you read the news and it's happy, you might say no. I think most recently with the war in Ukraine, we've seen some of the members of the Security Council, the P5, the permanent members. They've now, especially the United States, they've now started to talk a little bit more about the International Criminal Court, which is quite interesting because the US has like several laws in place where they basically say that the International Criminal Court is invalid and the United States will never, ever participate in it. And so it's quite interesting to see this shift in the dialogue or in the rhetoric about the importance of international law from a nation state that doesn't respect international law at all. So you can argue that in a realpolitik sense, when you have basically war, that cause a shift in perspective. And unfortunately, it takes wars of aggression to cause this change. I wish it didn't take, but it does look like ideally there could be sort of silver lining to the conflict where international law is heralded as something good again, which is of course a step in the right direction.
Another question is, how would taxes look in a world government? And how are they going to be conducted? Who is going to take them? What are they going to be used for?
These are great questions. Yeah. So these are all really great. I would really encourage you guys. I put the links in the chat. We have these questions like once a week. So we have polls like in our Discord server, in our Reddit, we have polls every day where we ask these questions. I think my favorite one that we've realized we need to do like regular questions and debates about is where the capital should be. So that people come into our online community and they ask that question about once a day. And another one similar is taxes. So we as an organization, like I said, we don't pretend to have all of the answers to these questions. We mostly just serve an educational position where we try to foster debate and get people engaged in this discussion. So I can only speak from my personal perspective now. So in my personal utopia, I would say that, obviously the World Federation would need the power to tax. And we see many, multinational corporations and small countries that serve as tax havens that basically allow, tax evasion on a grand scale. especially with the multinational corporations. It's really crazy, which is also where you see discussion amongst world leaders about a minimum corporate tax rate for the globe. So this is actually a problem that nation states are trying to solve amongst themselves, but unfortunately it's a global problem. So you basically would need every country on earth to buy into a minimum corporate tax rate. So as much as I love that idea, you really can't have one country say, okay, this is the global corporate tax rate, because they're only one country. So it's sort of an imperfect system trying to solve a global problem. I myself am really strongly in favor of a redistribution of the global wealth and taxing the rich countries and the corporations and distributing that wealth to the places that need it. I see the UN system is pretty bloated and having lots of civil society organizations, and it's largely underfunded as well. So I'm really for like a streamlined and efficient bureaucracy to provide, the basic services that the UN provides. What I mean by that is there's thousands of NGOs around the world that provide, education, healthcare, basic services like water and food. And these NGOs and civil society organizations each have their own administration. They all have their own president or treasurer. They all have their leadership, and they're not democratically accountable to anybody. They're completely independent. And so it's just highly inefficient to have so many different organizations providing what are essentially government services, healthcare, education, water. These are basic services that a government provides, and we have unelected NGOs all around the world providing these services. So I'm really strongly in favor of the UN being able to tax and provide these services directly with an administration. Yeah, but that's, again, my own personal utopia. So World Federalists themselves, if I said that to some other people in the movement, or even my own organization, my good friends on the board, they would say, no, what are you talking about? That's crazy. We don't want that. So everyone really has their own vision for how they want the world to look like, a united world to look like. But what really brings us together is that we want a united world. And we believe this nation state system is inadequate at solving global problems.
Thank you very much. I don't think we have enough time anymore. Thank you so much for coming, and I think we're going to start now. Everybody, we're going to start IOMUN 11.
Cool. Thank you. I'm gonna take off then. Thank you so much for your time. Have fun at your IOMUN or your Model UN. I'm really enjoy yourselves. Bye now.
So I want officially to say, a second. Nobody can see me. I want officially to say I'm declaring IOMUN 11 open. Woo! Woo!